So, normally I have a rule on not covering topics I already feel have been discussed enough by other people. However, I will make an exception to that rule if I feel that I can give my own spin on things that feels unique enough. And that is how I feel about this topic, despite the fact that I can think of a decent number of videos by other people on this topic. Said topic being terrible for-profit pedophile hunters. Now, creating content based around hunting predators is kind of a double-edged sword. One example of this that comes to mind, for me anyway, is from a few years ago. I don't think I need to explain who Chris Hansen is. Well, he made a series of videos where he investigated Jesus David Torres, better known by his stage name, Davey Vanity, of Blood on the Dance Floor. Vanity has been accused by multiple people of being a pedophile. Now, this did draw significant attention to the accusations because of, well, Mr. Hansen's reputation. But the thing is, the allegations had already been gathering steam beforehand. In 2014, they were kicked off a tour with Comba Christ after enough people complained. In 2018, both the Huffington Post and Metal Sucks ran articles detailing the allegations, and the next year, Spotify removed the band's music from their service. Although officially they said it was removed for hate speech. But the thing is, Hansen's investigation, which had him interview Insane Clown Posse, yeah, I'm surprised by just how random that is as well, did not result in the arrest of Davey Vanity, who still performs as the Kawaii Monster. You can certainly argue that it brought more attention to the allegations, but it didn't succeed in its ultimate goal. So I decided to take a look at a combination of names, both big creators and small ones. People who have either decided to put profit or clout ahead of actually delivering justice, or in some cases, didn't actually care about protecting kids. And, spoiler alert, Gideon will not be mentioned in this video. Mainly because, from what I understand, he has actually gotten people put behind bars. And I would say that's ultimately a sign of a predator hunter being successful. Also, I'm not including all of the names that could go on here, mainly because if I was to do that, I'd inevitably get at least one person saying that I missed someone. So I decided that it would be better if I selected a few, and if I get asked, what about insert terrible predator hunter here enough times, I'll make a follow-up video. But anyways, as usual, don't harass anyone I bring up. You already are quite familiar with it, but it bears repeating. So let's start off with the obvious choice that people will include in this type of video, Vitali.
Your boy can stay back there. Put your hand on the car, man. No, put your hand on the car.
Just lean on the car, please.
Lean on the car right there.
Hey, right here.
Can you do us a favor?
Listen,
can you do us a favor and wait for us over there, please? Can you do us that favor?
Put your hands behind the back. I'm gonna tell you again. Put your hands behind the back. I'm gonna tell you again.
I got to change the line.
Put your hands behind the back.
Hey, let me get another cup, bro. I gotta take this shit.
Case number 29235.
You know what I mean?
769 just wide back to 4.
I know, you're not gonna kill me.
You got it.
Watch your head. Guys, listen to this. Oh, no, listen to that, guys. Guys, oh. How do you want to do this?
Okay.
Get up.
I'm not.
And sit in there.
Okay.
Get up.
Listen to this.
And sit in there.
Okay, listen. Listen to this.
Stop resisting.
Okay, guys, I'm trying to tell you something. Oh, if you guys listen to this, oh, listen, guys,
all right, get in there. Get in there. Get in there.
No, listen.
No, hold on, the door's gonna bust. Get in there, bro. Get in there.
Vitali is the go-to example that people use for a bad predator hunter. He's an IRL streamer, which already raises red flags, as well as a kick streamer. Again, more red flags. But those two things are topics for entirely different videos. I actually was considering just saying I wouldn't include Vitali, although unlike with Gideon, who, as I mentioned, actually does have successful predator catches that he can cite, it's mainly because, well, Vitali is kind of low-hanging fruit for this topic. Basically, I was hesitant to join the choir on this one. But then I took a look at his Twitter account, and I realized that there's one thing that people overlook about his terrible predator catching streak. See, one thing that also stands out as a red flag about Vitali is that he will often bring guests along for his predator catching streams. That in and of itself is not a problem, but rather it's who these guests are. And who are they, you might ask? Well, the first that raised red flags for me was Myron from Fresh and Fit, who took a break from trying to be part of whites-only Twitter spaces. Myron's presence is actually kind of concerning since, for one thing, he's on the record as having helped his uncle, who was an enforcer for Omar al-Bashir, a war criminal, escape punishment after al-Bashir was overthrown, as well as having been accused of committing SA. And well, I could probably spend an entire hour going into why Fresh and Fit are very questionable in their views, to say the least. And next was Sneeko, who, well, let's just say his presence makes the entire thing rather ironic if you're familiar with what Sneeko's online reputation is. Seriously, of all the people you could bring on, you chose arguably the worst person. The only way that this would be a good idea would be if Sneeko was the target at the sting. What, was Andrew Tate not available? Although that being said, I was able to recreate part of the discussion between Sneeko and Vitali that led to Sneeko being a guest.
Only guarantee my cuckoldry the safety.
I will never get tired of using that clip. You won't be surprised to learn that all of the replies to the tweet by Vitali announcing that Sneeko would be a guest on his predator catching streams were like what I'm showing right now. Vitali also had Akon on, who, well, aside from running that whole Akon City thing, which is now generally agreed to have been a scam, has also apologized for dry humping a minor. And there's also Ava Chris Tyson. Now, the investigation Mr. Beast launched found that Ava had done no wrongdoing, and although there's the whole fact that this is basically a case of, we investigated ourselves and found no wrongdoing. This happened before the investigation's outcome was published. Yeah, not exactly the best look. And supposedly he had Donald Trump on, which, okay, I'm going to keep my personal politics out of this, but this one has actually aged really badly considering the whole controversy surrounding the Epstein files. I highly doubt that Vitali actually had Donald Trump on, given that the stream took place on Election Day, and, you know, when it happened, Trump was running for a second term. $20 says that if Jeffrey Epstein was still alive, Vitali would have actually tried to have gotten him to appear on one of his predator catching streams as a guest. Of course, I can't actually check if it was the real Donald Trump since, well, Vitali got banned on Kick. The only person that Vitali has had on that I would even say is remotely qualified is Kenel Joseph, and that's largely because he is connected with Gideon. But everyone else either doesn't have anything that really qualifies them more than, say, XQC or Trainwrecks, or is arguably someone who should be the target of one of these predator catching streams. But the guests are not the only red flag. An even bigger one comes up if you actually watch any of his videos, because Vitali does not actually care about bringing predators to justice. He actually focuses more on entertaining his audience. And the sad part is he'll get comments encouraging this. To any Kick streamer out there, I have to ask, is it really hard to turn off the content part of your brain for 5 minutes? In fact, given what he does do on stream, I get the feeling that if Vitali wasn't afraid of getting compared to Aiden Ross's streams where he basically has viewers torture themselves for money, he'd just be doing this to random people. I am partially saying that because Aiden Ross was actually a guest on one of his streams, and I would not be surprised if Aiden's torture streams were at least partially an inspiration for Vitali's streams. In one case, he actually got sued by someone. And you know what? I'm gonna say it. I actually think his predator catching streams are fake. And this isn't just my opinion.
So there's word on the streets that Vitali has been paying these actors to play these pedophiles.
Paying people to play.
But
Why do I feel this way, you might ask? Well, first of all, he's actually complained about fans of his faking being pedos to prank him.
Things are getting so big, you guys are trolling us and you guys are ruining our operation. That's why, thank God, we have 3 more fucking days left, bro. It was gonna get worse and worse, bro.
And second, there's at least one person he's made 3 different predator catching streams on. And I don't mean that there were 3 different people who streamed the same catch from 3 different perspectives, which actually would have been interesting. No, I mean he did 3 separate streams where he caught the same guy. So either Vitali let the same guy go twice just for the sake of content, or his stream screwed up the legal case against the supposed predator. Or, you know, the far more likely scenario, in my opinion, they're just fake, and the quote-unquote predator, I need to figure out how to get hand tracking so you can see my air quotes, was just an actor. Also, for someone who supposedly wants to make the world a better place, Vitali sure didn't try and follow the example he wanted others to follow in, since he's currently awaiting trial in the Philippines, facing up to 24 years in jail. And I highly doubt that anyone will remember him if he does wind up getting sentenced that long. So this is essentially the end of his career. Hell, even if he gets a shorter sentence, I don't think people will remember him when he gets released. Both the United States and his home country of Russia have declined to take him. And honestly, the Russians don't want him. I can safely say that on behalf of all Americans, that is fine with us as long as they don't insist we take him, which seems to be the case as well. He also got banned from Kick, which, given that the only other person I've covered that shares this distinction is Ethan Ralph, is a matter of dishonor. Now, I'm wondering if Vitali would have actually tried to get Ethan Ralph on as a guest on one of his predator catching streams. But let's move on to examples of people who do all of their work online. Let's take a look at why Mama Max is an example of a terrible for-profit pedophile hunter. This isn't an example of someone who had an actual case, but because of how they handled it, not only did they botch handling the case, but they also derailed their career. This is also the one you're probably the most familiar with, given that Max actually had a pretty big audience, and as such, I'm mostly going to focus on how badly he handled the actual case in question. Although, funnily enough, this was actually how I was first introduced to Mama Max. This isn't the only case I can think of where a creator's career-ending controversy actually wound up being the first time I heard about them. But anyways, in 2016, a 16-year-old named Spencer Slayton met an 18-year-old named Camden Gerard Davis online. Spencer ran away to live with Camden. Because Spencer's presence in Camden's home was a secret, Camden was able to manipulate her and abuse her. In general, Camden was very controlling of Spencer. Now, while these are just allegations, the story here is clear-cut, and at the very least, I would say that they should be seriously looked into by the authorities. If they are true, that is. Mainly because I couldn't find anything online to suggest that a missing persons report had been filed. The only evidence I could find that claimed that Spencer was missing was a flyer posted in a Facebook group. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Why is he a bad predator hunter if that's the case he had? It's pretty open and shut. Well, here's the thing. You wouldn't get that if you watched the video Max put out, because in his video, Max spent far more time trying to get his fans to have some other big creators react to the video. This included, of all people, the needle drop, with the incredibly weak justification of basically, the BGM's a banger, we think your audience would appreciate it, as well as talking about this werewolf vampire cult that I am 99% sure he just made up. And given that he has outright admitted he fakes elements of his videos, I actually do have reason to believe that, aside from just how ridiculous it sounds. In fact, I only know about the actual case he had because of a video by another YouTuber named Slimebeast, who made a simplified version which explained things in more detail. But what really caused Mama Max's campaign, I guess you could call it, to implode was the fact that he tried to clickbait cancel Moist Critical. See, Mama Max had reached out to Critical to get him to cover the story, but Critical hadn't really been responsive, mainly because, well, I'll display the clip from when Critical addressed it on stream.
Yeah, so here, you want me to talk about it a little bit? That rubbed me the wrong way. We talked like a month ago about like what he was working on in his investigation, and then apparently when I had COVID, he messaged me a couple times and I never saw it. And now he's taken that as me ghosting him and ignoring his very important mission. And it really rubs me the wrong way. Instead of just he jumping to the most extreme possible explanation for me not seeing it, which is really fucking cringe. That did make me upset. There. Yeah, that really rubbed me the wrong way. I had COVID, and I barely used Discord in the first place. It was a miracle I ever even saw his message to begin with. And then I spent 12 days not doing anything online in bed. And during that time, apparently it changed his whole framing of the video in order to make it like a Trojan horse of cancel critical, because he didn't respond to my messages and ghosted me. So yeah, that did rub me the wrong way. Good intentions, but I did not like that.
In the fallout that ensued, it was discovered that Mama Max had falsely accused another YouTuber named Magnetar of being a pedophile as a way to deflect from some allegations he had faced in the past. Which raises obvious questions about his case with Camden, since if he's willing to fake allegations against one YouTuber, who's to say he's not willing to fake allegations against another one? And then Vince Vintage released a bunch of cut audio which painted Mama Max in a very bad light. I have no idea how Vince got the clips in question, but it doesn't really matter. There is a bunch of other stuff from this fallout, but it's been documented to death by other people, so I'm not going to go super in detail about it. This represents a case of someone who cared more about being sensationalist than actually telling the story of the victims. Had Mama Max made a straightforward video talking about what Camden did to Spencer, he would have had a case he could have rallied people around. But because he chose to focus on the more sensational but questionable aspects, he nuked his credibility. But speaking of someone who nuked their credibility with just one case, let's take a look at the most recent example of a bad predator hunter on this list.
Safety. It only gets worse from here.
If you're going out with someone your own age, you can't take advantage of them.
For some reason, people think I'm unqualified to do this.
You know, I think they might have been onto something.
Now, this one might seem like an odd choice to include, since I Love Kim Possible a Lot is an animation critic, but I wanted to use a more recent example, as well as use an example that's more on the pure commentary side of things. Since I actually find that most commentary channels are at least somewhat responsible, at least when compared to people like Vitali. And as for why I'm naming two people in this entry, well, it's mainly because both are connected to the same case. Namely, the false allegations against SaberSpark. See, in both cases, both were more motivated by an agenda. I Love Kim Possible a Lot, who I'm referring to as KP for the rest of the video, was motivated because she wanted to take down someone SaberSpark had hired, aficionados Chris. However, KP decided to make a video that loosely connected both DA Games and SaberSpark through aficionados Chris, as both had hired Chris, and made a lot of jokes in said video that were in very poor taste. And also threw in some allegations that SaberSpark had committed sexual assault. However, the video was so bad that not only did she wind up privating it, but I've seen quite a few people say that it ended her career, which, given that she has been radio silent since she privated the video, I'm inclined to agree with that claim. And to top it all off, SaberSpark was able to find some old text of his that proved that the allegations, which were later revealed to have been made by Emu Emmy, were actually false. I would not be surprised if SaberSpark winds up suing KP. If you want a better understanding, Cope and Seethe and Mr. Enter, man, it feels weird that this is the first time I mentioned him, both in this particular context and in general, made videos covering the whole drama. This also impacted the allegations against Black Griffin, since it made Lazy Bedhead reevaluate her video covering the stuff he was accused of, and she decided to take it down. Mainly because she had used information that Bonk had given her, and while she did bring up some of her concerns with Bonk in that video, she didn't feel comfortable keeping it up in the light of what happened. This whole fiasco actually is the reason why I have a rule that if you want to submit stuff for me to look into, you need to report any actual crimes you found to the authorities before I will make a video. Although I will help you find which authorities to report to if you aren't sure. And if the circumstances are really special, I will make an exception to said rule. Now, in KP's case, her desire to go after aficionados Chris by itself is actually understandable because he had sexually harassed her. Now, the logical choice, at least to me, seems like you should focus on Chris and maybe briefly calling out SaberSpark as well as DA Games for hiring him, and also maybe alluding to SaberSpark defending Black Griffin, since at the time, the allegations against Black Griffin weren't tainted by the whole fiasco involving Bonk. But KP instead decided to make the video that destroyed her career. For whatever reason, KP also went on Angry Slug's stream to talk about the controversy. More on that asshole in a second. As for Bonk, Lazy Bedhead put out an entire video that's over 3 hours long calling him out, and given how much stuff there was to cover, I'm not going to rehash that, so go watch that. But I can prove that he didn't care about justice with one simple thing. One of the people who called out Bonk was Anthony Gramuliga, who correctly pointed out that Bonk should have gone to RAIN, the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network, if you haven't heard of them before. Bonk's response was this: forgetting that, you can Google something if you don't know what it is in this day and age. Bonk, if you're going to handle serious allegations like this, you should go out of your way to make sure you know who to contact. This is practically a requirement for handling something like this. And yes, you can't change the past. That doesn't excuse a fuck up like this. Now, you might wonder why I chose to include both of them in this video instead of just Bonk, given that KP is an animation critic. Well, originally I was only going to include Bonk, but because the two are so connected, I realized that it would be impossible to talk about one without the other. Also, like Mama Max, KP actually did have something legitimate she could use, namely aficionados Chris's sexual harassment of her that she let get lost in her actual video. As for Bonk, I'm honestly not sure what his thought process was, because the guy was not in the best mental state. Now, you might have noticed that one name I brought up in this segment was Angry Slug. I have no idea why he talked to KP. I guess she wanted some commentary channel to talk to, although I can think of quite a few better choices. However, aside from the fact that Slug was willing to associate with KP, it turns out that Slug is also a prime example of a terrible predator hunter.
Oh,
that's him dabbing?
That's him dabbing.
I didn't know there was sound
Oh,
effects
he's
on
dabbing
the
way
dab.
more than once. He's dabbing so many times. Also, that room is amazing.
This is a name I've mentioned before, specifically in my video on Celestial VT or Aurelia Berry. Angry Slug is the former editor for Mama Max who, after Mama Max fell from grace, decided to try and pick up the torch that Max was carrying. He was also friends with Chris Hansen in the past. No idea if they're still connected. However, Angry Slug is infinitely worse than Mama Max for a combination of reasons. Unlike the other three people I've covered so far, well, okay, technically other four, I'm not actually going to bring up a case that Slug covered, because he could literally have a 100% conviction rate, and that would not excuse his conduct. Now, it is worth noting that I am on the more empathetic side of commentary, like Lazy Bedhead or Safira De Noma, whereas I'd say Slug is closer to someone like, say, Turkey Tom, but that isn't really relevant to my opinion on him, because in my opinion, Slug is one of the worst people to upload content to YouTube. The first reason is that he has a habit of picking fights with people and attempting to use false evidence to slander them. One example, as highlighted by the aforementioned Slime Beast, was when he used AI audio to make it sound like Steve DeLeve was a pedophile. He's also a user of the site Doxbin, a site similar to Pastebin that's dedicated to doxing people. An example that I'll come back to in a minute is this, where he posted several Doxbin links, which, for reasons you'll soon understand, have been censored. And to preempt any comments for when we get back to this, the image I received was censored. As you can tell by the fact that Slug uses Doxbin, Slug has a past track record of doxing people. And this just isn't my opinion, he himself has admitted to this, referring to himself as a reformed doxer. This does not excuse the fact that he doxed people. Whether or not he picked this up from Mama Max, or if he started doing this on his own, is anyone's guess. Of course, reformed doxer makes it sound like he still doxes people, so maybe he meant former doxer? Second, and while I will admit that this is speculation on my part, I have reason to believe that he actually helped spread false allegations against another person. If you saw my video on Celestial VT, you already know what I'm talking about, but if you don't, she made objectively false allegations against another VTuber named Reedle64, which were disproven in a Google Doc that exposed a bunch of other stuff Celeste did, which included distribution of CSAM. While no drama VTubers fortunately covered the allegations, to my knowledge, one person who did cover them was Chris the Narc. As it just so happens, Chris the Narc was friends with Angry Slug in the past. So either Angry Slug or Slug's friend Oli Rain, who I'll get to in a second, passed the allegations on to Chris. Either way, if Slug had never met Chris would have never covered Celeste's false allegations against Riedel. Also, while Slug is on the record as hunting pedophiles, he will gladly make an exception if your name is Cody Ko, since he actually made a video where he defended Cody Ko. Yet, strangely enough, when the allegations against Dr. Disrespect came out, he had no problem going after Dr. Disrespect. And while it doesn't involve pedophilia, he was also willing to defend Wilbur's suit. It doesn't help that because of many of his antics, he arguably comes off as helping those he tries and goes after. For an example of this, I'll use Plagued Moth. Because of the reasons I've described so far, and that I'm about to describe, he gives Plagued Moth an easy way to dismiss any actual criticism by just pointing to Slug and say, "See, all my detractors are just like this guy." But the main reason is that I suspect that Slug is very likely a case of thou doth protest too much. Or in other words, I wouldn't entirely be surprised if he himself was actually a pedophile. I say this for a few reasons. First of all, he's actually been caught in the Discord server of Shadman. If you don't know who that is, he's an infamous hentai artist who drew images of actual children. I am not going to show any images in question because I don't think I need to explain why. And he was in said Discord server before he started going after predators. And just to give some proof, I'll display a clip of him in Shadman's Discord server, which will also serve as my rebuttal to his defense where he claims that he was only in there to use the promotional channel.
Everything? Well, that's good. So you should probably stream Monster Hunter World when that comes out.
Hey,
Stream
once I get a Nintendo Switch, I will.
I know Monster Hunter World is actually being released on Xbox One, PlayStation 4, and PC.
Oh, then yeah.
And just to prove that actually is him, here's what he sounds like when he's actually speaking.
Hey guys, this is an apology video. I did not know that I'm sorry, this is so hard to say. I am sorry that my penis is too massive for humanity.
Yeah. Second, and this is a rather infamous example amongst those who are familiar with him. Remember that photo I said I'd come back to in a minute? Well, I'm bringing it up again, except this time I'm going to show the full photo. As you can see, he posted links that, by his own admission, link to videos containing actual CSAM, which, you know, is a crime, namely distribution. And I did speak to a lawyer on this. Linking videos, even if you didn't upload them, can count as distribution. Before you ask, I have no idea who Rohan is, but what I do know is that nothing about Slug's actions make any sense. There's no way to tell who clicks on a link in a tweet, so either Angry Slug was hoping that any predators who found the links he posted would be stupid enough to like or share the post and out themselves, or he decided that he was going to make it easy for them and just post links so that they wouldn't have to look far, which either way, you come off as really stupid. You know that, Mr. Slug? But there is one other thing that's worth noting. Slug had these links saved on Doxbin. Xvideos, the one site named in the replies to that tweet, actually has an entire section of the site's FAQ dedicated to talking about what one should do if they find any illegal content, which CP would definitely qualify as, and they state that they want people to use the site's reporting system. Yet, Angry Slug not only did not report those videos, he actually copied the links. Now, I'm not sure if that counts as possession, but that is extremely negligent on his behalf at the bare minimum. Not only that, but there's a tweet where he admitted to watching CSAM in its entirety, and it's from 2021, meaning he can't claim that he saw Dom Lucre's post on Twitter. It would be one thing if he clicked on a video not knowing what it was, seen a few seconds, and shut it off after realizing what he was watching, provided he reported it to the authorities afterwards, but that's not what happened. Also, there are several other tweets from other people, and if they aren't referring to the tweet that I posted earlier, then he's done this multiple times. So to Angry Slug, if you are watching this video, why did you have all those links saved? Is your hard drive containing something that the authorities should know about? But while we are done with Angry Slug, there's one more person we have to talk about, a former friend of his. I've mentioned this person before in my videos. I am talking about Oli Rain. This asshole is someone I have unintentionally been working towards covering for quite a while now. I found quite a bit on Oli throughout my research. He's the closest thing to a VTubing equivalent of a for-profit pedo hunter. I say this because he had his own team called Hellcast. However, his methods, as well as Hellcast's methods, are very questionable to say the least. According to a former member of Hellcast, my friend Toes, he never passed any of the information he had found along to the authorities, which is already a red flag. Now, you might be wondering, why did I put Oli Rain at the end when I'm willing to bet that the overwhelming majority of you have absolutely no idea who the hell I'm talking about? Well, Oli Rain is special for a few reasons. First of all, he used to be a part of Angry Slug's team, but the main reason being that he's helped cover for an actual pedophile. If you're familiar with my videos, you probably already know who I'm talking about. If not, let me introduce you to the aforementioned Celeste, also known as Celestial VT and Oriella Berry. Celeste is a now graduated snow leopard VTuber whose antics I'm surprised more people haven't talked about because she's guilty of, among other things, misuse of donations, spreading false allegations of grooming against another VTuber, Riedel64, allowing minors in the same spaces that adult content creators are not only active in, but also posting their own content in, and most damningly of all, posting nudes of herself while she was a minor. And before you ask, no, I don't have the actual images in question, and even if I did, I wouldn't show them since even if there was some kind of weird loophole that would allow me to use them in a video like this and avoid a charge for possession of CSAM, YouTube would nuke my channel faster than I could click the upload button if I did. But you know what? Most of the stuff I just listed off involves his connection to other people. So what is Oli Rain himself guilty of that makes me say he's a terrible for-profit pedo hunter? Well, for one thing, he's on the record as harassing minors, despite the fact that, you know, he should be protecting them, as you can see in this image. Yes, I am aware of the fact that the minor in question is a zoophile, but that doesn't automatically mean he was justified. That would justify blocking the minor, or at most reporting them and moving on, but not harassing the minor. Second, he's more than happy to paywall his predator confrontations. One example that's now deleted involves the time he had Hellcast confront one of the VTubers on the blacklist, it's Neo. If you wanted to watch the confrontation, aside from some clips he released, you'd have to subscribe to his Twitch channel. Now, I can understand Ose editing down the stream to cut out stuff like dead air or off-topic conversations and releasing a condensed version and making the unedited version of the stream locked behind a paywall. I could also understand letting patrons see the stream early before releasing it to the public. But that isn't what Oli Rain did. Making things worse is that the stream was wiped from his Twitch account. While I highly doubt he was banned from Twitch, it is a possibility, which does make me worried about what he was banned for, considering the type of content he makes. Or he opted to remove the stream on Twitch himself. Or Twitch removed it because the 6 months passed. Which raises the question of why, considering he has accused Neo of being a predator on other platforms, most notably TikTok, he didn't back it up or re-upload it elsewhere. And if he's deleted it himself and is just trying to move on from this part of his life, why didn't he take down the videos he made on other platforms? But that's not the only thing involving Neo that I can call Oli Rain out for. See, Oli has a special hatred of Neo for whatever reason, and not only is he more than happy to dox him on multiple platforms, but he even claimed that he contacted the Greensville, South Carolina Police Department. However, because Oli Rain made the mistake of explicitly naming a specific police department instead of just saying the authorities, I actually reached out to said police department. They basically said they had no idea what I was talking about and there was no case open against Neo. So in other words, Oli Rain was lying. I don't know if that counts as impersonating a police officer. But that's not the only thing Oli Rain was willing to lie about. Oli was also willing to accuse Neo of committing revenge porn. However, he never offers any evidence of that, and considering that even the VTuber blacklist didn't accept this information, there is no reason to believe this either. If he's willing to lie about something like that, why should I trust any evidence this guy is willing to present? Considering that the blacklist only evidence of Neo being a predator is from Oli Rain, I would say that Neo's case should be critically re-examined, given that Oli has now proven himself as an extremely questionable source. I would do it myself, but I would need the entire contents of that Discord VC where Hellcast confronted Neo. So if you want to see me re-examine Neo's case, help me find that entire VC. Hey Oli, since you enjoy accusing people of stuff without any proof, in the event that you are watching this video, I might as well ask, how did it feel when you shot JFK? What, since you don't need any evidence to claim that Neo committed revenge porn, something which your friend Celeste doesn't have a problem with, given that she worked with Demon Lord Lucian, who's guilty of the act, I don't need to present any evidence that you shot JFK, and that's still more plausible of a theory than anything Oliver Stone has presented. But you might also remember how I brought up Hellcast in my video on Draco Star Scale. If you didn't watch that video, basically what happened was my friend Atoz decided to try and get Draco to confess. However, the plan was derailed by Akuma Miko, who was able to get the rest of Hellcast to turn on Atoz. Now, kicking Atoz out of Hellcast alone is a very questionable move over this, but that's not the only thing. Oli then said that the next episode of Hellcast would be on Atoz. This is in spite of the fact that there is literally nothing you could use on Atoz, and that Oli was overlooking 3 other members of Hellcast who were far more deserving of being a target of one of Hellcast's investigations. The aforementioned Celeste, Akuma Miko, who I have made 3, will be 4 in the near future, videos covering the allegations against her, and Chloe, who was willing to talk about someone's dick in the presence of a minor. Fortunately for Atoz, Hellcast was never able to make that video on her. Unfortunately for Oli Rain, Atoz would later meet me thanks to his friend Akuma Miko, and well, here we are. Also, much like with Mama Max, Oli was more than happy to target people who merely had the misfortune of being related to people who Hellcast went after. Case in point, he actually sent a letter to Draco Starscale's parents. This is in spite of the fact that Hellcast had not found any evidence on Draco to suggest that his parents were aware of his activities, much less were actively encouraging them. Oh, and according to Atoz, Oli actually did this independently from Hellcast. So, Oli can't even claim to be acting on the group's behalf. So yeah, Oli Rain is easily the worst example. Like Mama Max, he's willing to make up false allegations. Like Vitali, he doesn't actually care about his victims. Like Bonk and I Love Kim Possible a lot, he's willing to let his personal feelings get in the way of justice. And most of what I said about Angry Slug can apply to Oli Rain as well, given that the two were friends. So yeah, I think it's time to wrap this up.
It's so easy. Anger. Vengeance. Luckily, I'm not you, and I never will be.
So, how do I want to end this? Well, I guess I can talk about what anyone who actually wants to bring predators to justice online should do. First, report any actual crimes you find. There are 2 resources you can use if you live in the United States: the FBI's IC3 website and RAIN. Even if you only report to one of them, it's better than nothing. Brony Fandom didn't do this, and well, the allegations he was trying to get people to cover wound up being false. Second, don't sacrifice a chance for justice just so you can get some content. Work with the authorities as much as possible. At the very least, report someone before you upload whatever video you made. If Vitali's predator hunts are real, then he's a perfect example of what not to do in this regard. Third, keep things as easy to understand as possible. People aren't going to want to help you pursue justice if they can't understand the wrong that has been committed. Mama Max made the mistake of not doing this and paid the price. Fourthly, make sure you verify everything if possible. If KP had actually reached out to Saberspark and asked him about the allegations, odds are that if she had made a video, she might have made an entirely different one, but it's very likely she would still have a career. And lastly, just remember that just because you're going after people who have done absolutely abhorrent things, that does not make you immune to criticism. Oli Rain going after predators does not excuse him spreading false allegations or deciding to go after Atoz just because he sided with Akuma Miko over Atoz after Akuma derailed Atoz's plan regarding Draco's Starscale. Same goes for pretty much everyone else I've covered. I don't have anything to say to Vitali, Mama Max, Brony Fandom, or KP, but to Angry Slug, I'll say the same thing I said to you in my video on Celestial VT, namely, go fuck yourself. And as for Oli Rain, I'm just gonna play a particular clip from Justice League Unlimited that says how I feel about you.
Burn.
But anyways, thanks for watching. I'm Andres Rebel, and I'll see you on my next assignment. Later.